We still don't have a sense of the listed projects that the premiers and the Prime Minister have come up with that would populate the implementation of this bill, which is not only anti-democratic, it just is stupid.
Stupid moves from the Liberal government. Who would have thought? Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a few other dumb things that happened yesterday, especially with the Liberals flat out lying to us in the House of Commons, let alone in general. There was also 8 hours of a committee hearing in regards to Bill C5 that took place yesterday. Full transparency, I've only gotten about 3.5, almost 4 hours into the committee hearing, so I'll be playing some of the clips from there, but haven't finished completely, as well as just a few other random stories. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, I want to take a look at this bombshell of a story that's coming from the PBO, the same gentleman that proved 8 out of 10 individuals actually got less money when the consumer carbon tax was active. He just came out with this statement saying that the average family is only to save $280 per year from the Liberal tax cut. The PBO estimates the average Canadian family will save $280 on their taxes next year thanks to the Liberal government's planned income tax cut. Prime Minister Mark Carney's plan pitched annual savings of up to $825 per dual income family, which actually I think he was more like $840, something like that. But the PBO says in a new analysis that the average family likely won't get that much back. A couple with a child who are both earning in the second income bracket would get the closest with $750 in average savings, but most single Canadians and seniors are expected to save less. So yet again, the Liberals lying to us, trying to pull a fast one on us. I'm sure the PBO's numbers are correct, like they were back when he did the consumer carbon tax, but I guess only time will tell. But then there was this story that came out from a French outlet. Now this article is translated from French to English, so hopefully everything is correct. But it's talking about the CBC and Radio-Canada being biased during the 2025 election, the one that we just had. Now, we all pretty much knew that the CBC was behind this, but now there's actual data. So it says the campaign of 2025, a computer scientist reveals that the CBC and Radio-Canada's biases. Using new technological tools, a computer scientist from Regina reviewed CBC and Radio-Canada's 2025 electoral coverage. Its investigation highlights an uneven and impartial treatment of the major parties. I'm not an enemy of Radio-Canada, but I am very critical of what has become of this state-owned company. The public funding, competition, and partisan biasing adding a layer to my criticism. Now he goes into some of the numbers and he says that the treatment of Pierre Poilievre in the French press of Radio-Canada is obvious. Of the 220 items analyzed, 64 are in cessor of the case against him, and only 14 were positive ones, plus a ratio of 4.6 to 1. In contrast, Mark Carney is treated with a balanced treatment of 48 positive and 48 negative, so a 1-to-1 ratio. Another finding reinforcing this imbalance, the average time of displayed news. A positive article on Carney is on average 15 hours and 14 minutes on the homepage, compared to only 8 hours and 30 minutes of those valorizing Poilievre. So pretty much almost half the time, Pierre's article stays up on their homepage compared to Carney's. Now he gets into the CBC, the English side, and he says, the data from CBC, the English counterpart of the public broadcasters, paint an even more clear picture. Out of 420 items analyzed, half, 118, have a clear bias in favor of a leader. Mark Carney emerged as the big favorite with 85 articles that were positive compared to only 27 negative bias, a ratio of 3.5 to 1. On the other hand, Pierre Poilievre is systematically disadvantaged. Out of 78 articles that were negative, only 17 were positive, with a ratio of 4.5 to 1. So regardless if it was the French media or the CBC, or like Radio-Canada or CBC, Poilievre was very disadvantaged. 4.6 to 1 on French, 4.5 to 1 in English. And the guy didn't have a chance. Now, this could have been because the Conservatives shot themselves in the foot by just hammering in, defunding the CBC. So the CBC did what they had to do to survive, in a sense. But yeah, now we actually have some data to back that up. Now, moving on to the House of Commons today, the Liberals decided to continuously lie about this EV mandate that's been discussed for the past few days in the House of Commons. And this was the opening with Andrew Scheer and the new Environmental Minister, Julie DeBrusen, I believe her last name is pronounced. And this was their interaction.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This Liberal government is doubling down on its insane ban on gas-powered vehicles. The latest Liberal overreach kicks in next year, and soon your favorite car, truck, and van will be illegal. But this mandate is already driving up prices. The average price of a new car is $67,000. Used cars are approaching $40,000, and this Liberal mandate will add an additional $20,000 per vehicle. They've already priced working Canadians out of the housing market. Why are they pricing working Canadians out of the ability to buy a vehicle as well?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, first let's start with the facts, which is there is no ban on gas-powered vehicles. But more to the point, let's also say, once again, we're seeing the Conservatives talking down one of our most important industries, employing hard-working auto workers in our country at the very moment that we're facing tariff threats from the United States. I find it rich that they are choosing to take this position instead of talking up a growing and important industry. We stand with our auto workers.
Very good. Leader of the Opposition.
There absolutely is a ban. It starts to come into effect next year, and it will absolutely devastate the auto sector here in Canada. The auto sector is already under fire from unjustified U.S. tariffs and the PM's inability to get a deal, but GM, Ford are all saying that this ban will kill jobs. In fact, a new report says that this ban on gas-powered vehicles will kill 90,000 auto jobs. Wow. Instead of sending even more jobs to the U.S., why not end the ban on gas-powered vehicles and let Canadians decide what kind of vehicle they want to buy?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, it's nice to hear that they're finally recognizing that we're talking about an industry that's facing unjustified tariffs from the United States.
That's right.
But let's also talk about how our auto sector is important. We need to support it in this moment. It's creating good-paying union jobs in our country. An EV standard actually makes sure that new electric vehicles are available to Canadians. They're cheaper to operate, they're cheaper on upkeep, and Canadians want to be able to have access.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
You don't have to allow Canadians to buy one type of vehicle by banning their ability to buy the ones that they actually want. But, this is raising a lot of questions. Canadians, auto workers, Ford, GM, they all don't want the EV mandate, but the Prime Minister is intent on pushing it through. Why? Well, right before becoming Prime Minister, he was chair of Brookfield, and he advocated for a ban on gas-powered cars. Brookfield is heavily invested in the EV supply chain, yet this Prime Minister refuses to reveal his financial interests or self-admitted conflicts. Isn't it true that this isn't about the environment, this is about the bottom line for Brookfield?
Now, Julie chose not to stand up and another minister answered, but this question continued from the Conservatives to all the Liberals. And Steve McKinnon at one point stood up and said this ridiculous statement, which I'm about to play. But then the Conservatives doubled down and proved them wrong from their own website. And even Andrew Scheer and Mark Strauss were reading off of the website. Andrew Scheer tried to bring this up at the very end of question period and was immediately shut down. Take a look.
Mr. Speaker, this line of questioning is somewhat absurd. Whether you want to get on a skidoo, whether you want to get on an all-terrain vehicle, whether you want to gas up your F-150, whether the plumber wants to take the truck to work, that is that person's choice in this country. There is no ban on gas-powered vehicles. This is completely conjured up fake showmanship from the Conservatives. Unbelievable. There is an auto sector in Canada. We're going to stand up for the people in it. We're going to protect it, and we're going to give consumers choice.
Mr. Speaker,
Speaker, contrary to that member's remarks, I'm reading Canada's Electric Vehicle Availability Standard regulated targets for zero-emission vehicles on my phone right now. It's on their website. They are regulating this. They are mandating this while Canadians are not choosing to buy EVs. EV sales are down 45% in our country right now. And that's okay. Living in a liberal democracy means different people make different choices for their families based on their different needs as they see fit. Why won't the Liberals respect the right of Canadians to choose the vehicle that serves their family best?
Hey! And that is the end of question period. I think 2 points of order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I have in my hands, Mr. Speaker, a document entitled Canada's Electrical Vehicle Standard with a timeline where it says that the requirements increase to one.
I don't think so. I don't think so. There's no unanimous consent.
So as you could hear there, all the Liberals yelling, no, no, he can't table this this proof of it. But luckily for you guys, I'm the unanimous consent myself. So this is what he's referring to. Canada's zero-emission vehicle sales target. To help decarbonize the transportation sector, we need to accelerate the adoption of EVs. That is why the Government of Canada committed to achieve 100% zero-emission vehicle sales by 2035 for all new lightweight duty vehicles, including the interim targets of at least 20% by next year or at least 60% by 2030. And when you go even deeper into this, the availability standard, it says under the new electric vehicle availability standard, all auto manufacturers and importers must meet annual zero emissions vehicles, the ZEVs regulated sales target. The targets begin for the 2026 model year with the requirements that at least 20% of new light duty vehicles offered for sale in that year are zero emission vehicles. The requirements increase annually to 60% by 2030 and to 100% by 2035. And you can see this graph here and even down here. Given that the average age of a vehicle is 15 years, putting in place a 100% zero emissions vehicle sales target by 2035 will help end the use of polluting light duty vehicles by 2050. So these guys can keep saying that there's no ban, but there clearly is going to be a ban if that's the goal, that 100% of the sales of vehicles will be EVs. Now, there has been quite a lot of pushback, as you heard from Andrew Scheer, Ford, GM, all the plants, they're actually reducing the amount of EVs that they're putting forward. And even the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association is criticizing the Canadian government's zero emissions vehicle mandate, calling it mathematically and factually incorrect, and warning of potential damage to the auto industry. The CVMA, representing the Detroit 3 in Canada, argues that declining EV sales and consumer demand, coupled with the mandate's strict targets, necessitate a review and potentially repeal of the mandate, according to their CEO, Brian Kingston. And we can go a step further by saying David Adams, the CEO of Global Automakers of Canada, which represents overseas brands, said that automakers are at various stages of their EV transitions, but most are unlikely to reach Canada's 20% sales target for the 2026 model year. Now, do you think the Liberals care about this? Do you think they're even listening to the experts? My answer would be no. They only listen to the leader, the climate zealot, Mark Carney, and his whole plans going forward. And a lot of these have ties back to the WEF, because if you remember, they have the whole idea of 15-minute cities, and that's where EVs would essentially thrive. You're not really driving very far, so you're not expending a lot of the battery. It would last you a lot longer. And it's not a conspiracy theory, because there's even organizations that are openly talking about this. This one here, C40 for Cities, it says C40 is a global network of mayors of the world's leading cities that are united in action to confront the climate crisis. And when you scroll down, it gives you all of these little cities that are scrolling by. As you can see here, Montreal is part of it. And when we actually go to the map and we select North America here from the options, we can see that Montreal is here, Toronto is here, signed up, and Vancouver. And when you click on it, it tells you how long they've been here. Since 2012 for Vancouver, Toronto with Olivia Chow since 2005, and Montreal has been since 2016. And again, the reason I say that they're talking about 15-minute cities is because they themselves talk about it. Here in the urban planning and design, it says, the commitment to sustainable urban planning helps move cities away from the paradigm of auto-oriented sprawl and towards a model of compact, connected, and resilient communities with a better quality of life for all. High-impact action in this sector include implementing 15-minute city or complete neighborhood policies that provide public amenities, essential shops, and a mix of economic activities within a short walk or bike ride of residential homes. I don't know how much more proof people need. They always say that these are conspiracy theories. Oh, you talk about the WEF, 15-minute cities, you guys are kooks. Are we though? They're openly talking about it. Olivia Chow has signed on to this. Montreal, Vancouver, they have signed on to this, these mayors. Who knows when these are going to get implemented, but they're going to be following these steps to get this as fast as possible. And I can see Bill C-5 being part of this because of the sweeping power that is implicated with it. And as I mentioned, there was 8 hours of committee yesterday talking about this bill. And the one part that stuck out the most to me was when Dr. Leslie Lewis was questioning the omnipotent power of this bill, that there's no actual like hard stop. Where's the cutoff? What makes you say that this is going too far? And when she was questioning Minister LeBlanc, his answers weren't really that great. But then Freeland decided to come in and was quite insulting. And just check out this exchange between Leslie Lewis and the two ministers.
Section 21, 22, and 23 operates to allow any project to be exempt from this legislation. Mr. Bassam-Duval suggested that this legislation was similar to the Emergencies Act. I'm seeking some clarity on your answer, Minister LeBlanc, regarding because notwithstanding the validity of a law, Section 21, 22, and 23 of Bill C-5 allows a project to be exempt from the legislation. And we have seen sweeping powers in the notwithstanding clause in Section 33 of the Constitution that allows the suspension of liberties, but there is a provision that protects citizens under Section 1, which is the reasonable limits. Where's the reasonable limits of this legislation? Where's the breaks in this legislation so that federal governments don't become bullies and sweep into municipal and provincial jurisdiction like they did with Bill C-69?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, Dr. Lewis, thank you for the question. I think it's important. The reason the government has put this bill before Parliament is precisely to enable large projects in the national interest to be built. I think that the context and the purpose of the legislation, there's part one, which speaks about free trade within Canada. The part with respect to major projects focuses on enabling. And this is enabling legislation that creates a framework for these projects to be advanced. So, people often refer to the clauses, Dr. Lewis, that you properly raised. Any exercise of authority in that context has to be done with respect to the purpose of the legislation. So if the purpose of the legislation is to enable these large projects to be built, you can imagine a series of statutes that may form part of that evaluation, and then it's exercised by the governor and council, which is not an unusual process.
My question specifically, though, doesn't deal with the enabling aspect of the legislation. We know what the legislation is about, but my question is specifically, what do you, Minister, see as reasonable limits on these sweeping powers that allow the invalidation of laws pursuant to Section 21, 22, and 23 of Bill C-5. Where are the reasonable limits? What do you see as reasonable limits? And why aren't they contained in this bill?
Well, so again, the reasonable, I think it's important, first of all, to put it in context. These decisions will be exercised in consultation with provincial and territorial leaders. The proponents of the projects, I'm encouraged by premiers working together to create, for example, energy corridors. The proponents in many cases may be sovereign, provincial, and territorial governments with Indigenous partners. So that is a limitation. That is a limitation in and of itself. We'll be designating projects that have gone through the scrutiny of other orders of government, for example.
But Minister, yesterday we heard concerns from a number of stakeholders and constitutional experts who confirmed that this bill is vague, has been hastily written, and leaves much uncertainty with respect to projects of national interest. In fact, that determination, it was concluded that that determination would be solely a political decision, which, given these provisions in Section 21 and 22, leaves room for political abuse. And my question, I'm turning back to the question, is where are the breaks in this legislation, and why are there no reasonable limits put in this legislation so that this government can evoke the confidence of the people?
Dr. Lewis, if I may, seeking to understand the roots of your concern, I guess I'd like to understand whether you are concerned that as a result of this legislation, we will build too much. Whether as a result of this legislation, we will get too many major projects built.
Excuse me. I think that is actually a very pejorative way of characterizing my concern. And Canadians are concerned, and I don't want you to minimize Canadians' concern about building too much. That's very facetious and it's unnecessary. We're trying to help, and we had witnesses yesterday that were very concerned about the about the liberties that will be suspended in this legislation, and you're making a joke out of it. It's not funny.
No,
it is not funny.
No, truly, I was in no way making a joke. I was being entirely serious. This legislation is being proposed by us, and I believe it is being supported by the Conservatives, because there is a national consensus, which I believe many Conservative MPs agree with, that we have come to a place in Canada where we have such a thicket of processes and rules and regulations at all levels of government that we are unable to build with the alacrity that this moment in time requires. This legislation addresses precisely that realization, and that's why it creates a clear framework to consider and put forward projects of national interest. There's going to be great transparency in terms of which are the projects being put forward. There is a specified list of the areas where the legislation may need to move with more alacrity. And I'm very sympathetic, as I believe my colleagues are, to concerns around protecting due process, protecting the rights of Canadians. Absolutely.
Thank you.
But I'm very confident this legislation will in no way infringe on rights and will do something that Canadians have a right to, which is to build Canada.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chair,
much, Minister.
I'd like the record to show that my question was not answered.
Like, I wish I was surprised by the answer that Freeland gave, but I'm not. I mean, Leslie Lewis is trying to ask a legitimate question. Where are the brakes? Where is it that you hit the brakes? You say, no more, we can't go further. And Freeland is like, oh, are you just worried that we're going to build too much? And that's why you're opposed to this? No, many people, different organizations, different groups have said that this bill is too much power. There's too much sweeping power. It's a Trojan horse. You're trying to implement multiple things in one bill by putting the interprovincial trade in there, but as well as now this sweeping powers. This is a problem. Canadian civil liberties could be bypassed because of whichever minister decides to be in this role can just veto it. And that's what they're trying to get at, and Freeland gives that answer. And Freeland and LeBlanc were there for about 3 hours, so there's now 5 more hours that I have to still watch. But with all that being said, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. If you guys can, please hit the subscribe button, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.